Hi there, my name is Sara. I hope that you're having a really lovely day. Today I'm back to chat to you about my knitting progress that I've made over the past month or so. I think it's been about 5 weeks since I filmed the previous episode. I was going to film last week and then I didn't get around to it, so I have quite a lot to talk about today. But some of them are pieces that you have seen before, so I might be a bit more brief about those and go in a bit more detail about the new cast-ons that I have. I did start quite a few pieces last week. I've been feeling really inspired by spring knitting this year. I don't really have any kind of warmer weather knits, and so I'm really excited to get on with some of those. And I've started working on some more transitional pieces, but also a couple that are more like specifically warmer weather knits. And I do think having 5 whips on my needles is a bit much for me, but also I do have over a week off coming up for Easter holidays, so I am going to be able to make quite a lot of progress soon, hopefully, and actually get some of those finished. So with that being said, the only other thing that I wanted to mention before I get on with it is I started a knitting journal this month. I'll try to put a little flip through on the screen so you can see it. There's not a lot in it at the moment, but I've made a few pages and I thought it'd be nice to maybe share monthly updates of that as well in these videos. Obviously if you watch kind of the weekly videos, you'll get to see me working in it every once in a while, just like I do my other regular journals, but I thought it'd be nice to share here as well since it is more like specifically knitting related. I do keep a lot of notes. Generally I take notes in the notes app on my phone and then I transfer those over to Ravelry, but I thought it'd be nice to also have a physical record of it. I think I'm a pretty analog person. I really like tangible things. I really love writing in notebooks, and I had this ring binder sitting around that I wasn't using that I thought would be a really lovely knitting journal. So I thought I would mention that, and if any of you also do keep knitting journals, I'd love to hear what you keep in it and kind of what types of spread you find useful within it, because I don't want to make things overly complicated, but you know, it'd be nice to make things a little bit more fun and go a bit beyond just keeping a record of the projects that I'm working on. So that being said, I'm not actually wearing anything hand knitted today. The only handmade item I'm wearing today is my earrings. I made those a couple of weeks ago and I really like the way they turn out, so I'm wearing them today. But as I said, I don't really have any kind of warmer weather knits, and the weather's really warmed up the past few days. It's really sunny out today, so I'm just wearing a regular t-shirt. So I'm gonna get started with my finished objects, and I feel like it makes sense for me to start with what I think was my main project for the month of March. This is one that you have seen before, and it's my Sporty knit Skort. This is a pattern by Florence Miller, and it's a really lovely rib Skort with obviously shirts underneath. I don't know how much you're going to be able to see because I did knit this in a really dark grey, but I'll try to put b-roll and hopefully that explains it a bit better. I think last time I showed this I was about halfway through the skirt maybe, and I hadn't started the shorts yet. So I finished the skirt and then I ended up actually blocking it before picking up stitches underneath the waistband to do the shorts. I was planning on doing that anyways, but also I got an unintentional break, like week-long break from working on this because I forgot my 3.5mm needles at home at my parents', and so I wasn't able to retrieve those for a week. And coincidentally that was just after I'd actually finished the skirt part, so I blocked that. I wanted to block that separately from the shorts because I wanted to be able to lay it out really wide. I don't have pins specifically, so I just laid it out as wide as it would go and I let it dry that way. I didn't really pin it in place or anything, but I really like the way that it looks right now, the way that it fits, and I think the ribbing did relax quite a lot. And then after that I picked up stitches and knit the shorts. This was a really enjoyable knit. It's a lot of knitting, I think more than it probably looks like it is, but it's quite mindless knitting, I found. So the folded over waistband has an elastic inside of it and that's just stuck in it, and then the skirt really is just ribbing with some increased rounds every once in a while. So if you find ribbing relaxing to knit, which I do, this might be a really nice project for you to make. And then the shorts are really just stockinette, save from the very bottom where you have a little bit of a ribbed hem. And again, the increases in the shorts are quite spaced out, so you don't have a lot to keep track of. So I found this to be really easy to pick up and put down, even if I only had like 5 minutes to work on it. So a lot of knitting, but not very complicated knitting. But there are a lot of stitches, especially for the skirt towards the end. You've got quite a lot of stitches on the needle, so a round can take quite a while. That being said, I didn't really find it to be much of a drag. It was just, I think because I was picking it up very often, it ended up going by quite quickly. And overall, I think this took maybe about a month. I haven't actually yet gotten around to blocking the shorts, but I have just been wearing it as is. I think I'm really happy with the fit, both of the skirt itself, but also the shorts. I was a bit worried about it. I've never knit shorts before, and I find trousers are something really difficult to shop for. This fits wonderfully. Again, I haven't blocked the shorts yet. I think the ribbing especially might relax a little bit, but they don't feel tight, they don't feel loose, and mostly they don't feel bulky underneath the skirt. So they've just been really comfortable to wear. And I'm actually considering just reusing the shorts part of the pattern to make myself a pair of summer shorts, maybe in like a cotton or a linen. I might shorten the waistband for those, just so I don't have a really like tall triple layer of knitting, which might get a bit warm kind of in the middle of summer. But I think it was a really well written pattern. Florence's instructions are very clear, and at least for my size, I knit size B for both the skirt and the shorts. It fits perfect and very true to measure. The only other thing that I wanted to mention was the yarn that I used. So I knit that, I did get gauge, I knit that on 3.5mm needles for a majority of it, and then went down to 3mm needles for the ribbing in the shorts. And I knit that using the Sesia Origin. This is a 75% wool, 30% alpaca blend, and I use the colour 154, which I think is called dark grey. I bought the recommended 8 balls for the pattern. This is the same meterage as the pattern that Florence used for her version. So I think it's 110 meters per 50 grams, 112 meters per 50 grams, and I think hers was 110. So I did get the recommended amount of yarn, and this is all I have left. I haven't weighed this, but this might be like, I don't know, 5 grams. However, I am using this exact same yarn for a different project that I'm going to talk about in a moment. And so I do have more of it to show, and I think I'm probably going to end up, they're not the same dye lot, but I'm probably going to be able to still finish this up for that project as well. So we'll get back to that in a second. So that's it for my skirt. Next up, I'm going to talk about a pair of socks that were a work in progress in the previous episode. These are my poet socks. This is a pattern by Sari Nordlund. They were so much fun to knit. I was really craving some lace knitting, and so I cast on this really lacy pair of socks using a very lovely yarn. I knit these using the woollentwine fibrestudio Ovis Sock yarn, which is 100% wool. It's my first pair of 100% wool socks. I haven't worn these in boots yet, but they've been so lovely to wear around the house. They feel like such a fancy at-home pair of socks. Like, they feel like a treat every time I put them on. So I'm really happy with my yarn choice. I think in the autumn especially, I'd really like to make some more pairs of socks in this yarn. Maybe in a burgundy. She dyes the most beautiful, like kind of warm toned terracotta burgundy colours. Anyways, these are knit in the colour Maroon from her January collection. And I don't think I really made that many modifications to the pattern. I might have shortened the rib cuff a little bit. I think I maybe did 2 fewer rows than was recommended. And then I shortened, the main modification I did was I shortened the gusset. So these are a top-down pair of socks. That's one size only, so it's 60 stitches on 2.5mm needles. I was tempted to go down to 2.25mm needles because I was afraid they might be a little bit too wide around the foot part, but I ended up sticking to 2.5 because I have made a 2.25mm sock before with 60 stitches, and that's a bit tight to get on. These definitely do stretch out quite a lot with wear, but I haven't found them to be too big to comfortably wear. So I'm glad that I stuck to the 2.5mm needles. The only thing is, on 2.5mm needles, the recommended length for the gusset was just going to be too long for me, and it was going to make a really big sock. And so I basically halved that. I'll put a close-up of it, but I have a really short gusset on these, or at least it looks like it, just because obviously on 2.5mm needles your stitches are going to be bigger, your row gauge is going to be longer, I guess. So what I did was I started knitting it, and then I knit it until it was the same height as the gusset on a pair of 2.25mm needle socks that I knit that fit me really well, and that worked out great. So these actually fit really well. They're super comfortable, and they look so beautiful. And because I did not have enough of this stitch pattern once I finished them, I ended up casting on another pattern in the Poet series that Sari Nordlund has, and that is the Poet scarf. This was my project for last week. I cast it on last Sunday, and then I finished it on Monday evening, and then I blocked it. And today's Wednesday, and it was my first day wearing it out, and it's been really lovely. My plan for this was I wanted to knit it with some leftover yarn from a different project. I knit a sweater number 29 earlier on in the year using the Sandnes Garn Peer Gynt in the colour red wine. The colourway is 4363, which is this really lovely burgundy. I really like it, but I had 2.5 balls of this left. I had about 250 grams of it, or 240 maybe, which was about the recommended amount of yarn for this pattern specifically. And so I thought it'd be a really good way to just use up some yarn that I had in stash. As you can tell, I still have quite a lot of it left. I think I have about 40 grams left. I know I weighed this specifically, and I used 96 grams of yarn in total to make this. And I knit this exactly to pattern. This is a pretty simple pattern to modify if you would like to make it kind of bigger, like if you would like to keep increasing. It's something that you could do very easily, and I think a shawl version of this would look so lovely. This really isn't big enough to wear as a shawl, like it doesn't, you can't really kind of close it up at the front. Mine is knit with a pretty, like it's not particularly drapey either. I think if you knit it with a little bit of a lighter weight yarn, maybe like a sport weight, or anything just a little less, yeah, I don't know, I think my gauge was maybe a bit tight. I probably could have sized up a needle size to get a little bit more of an open gauge and a little bit of a bigger scarf, but because I was knitting it with quite woolly wool, the Peer Gynt is 100% Norwegian wool, I thought it makes sense to have a bit of a denser gauge as well. And I didn't gauge swatch for it, I just stuck to the recommended needles, but I wanted still quite a bit of a dense gauge scarf, because for this time of year, especially where I live here in northern Italy, we get pretty cold mornings, but it's like t-shirt weather. Well, it's not necessarily t-shirt weather outside at the minute, you'd still need to wear a jacket, but it's quite warm in the afternoons, and so when I go to uni in the morning, it's nice to have a little scarf to wear. And I still want it to be something warm, but at the same time I don't want to be wearing like my big winter scarf, because then in the afternoon I don't know what to do with it, and I don't want to just stuff it in my backpack. This is a really easy thing to just fold up and put in my backpack, and it doesn't take a lot of space, but it still keeps me very warm in the mornings. So I'm very happy with how that turned out. Again, the pattern for both this and the Poet socks was super clear. I really liked Sari Nordlund's way of writing instructions. I thought the charts were clear. The only thing that I wish was maybe done different was you work edge stitches on either side of the scarf, or like on either side of the chart to make the I-cord edge, and you get instructions for those written kind of in a written section before the actual charts. They're not included in the charts themselves, and they're very easy to kind of learn. But at first because I kind of looked at them, but then I wanted to look at the chart, I got it wrong at first, and so the I-cord wasn't turning out. So in the end what I did was I just like screenshotted the written part and then I pasted that on top of the chart so I could look at both simultaneously until I learned the edge stitches properly. I don't know if that makes any sense, but in any case I thought the instructions were clear, and the charts are really lovely. Again, I just think the stitch pattern is absolutely beautiful, and I'm really, really happy to be able to have another piece from that collection. Last but not least, for my finished objects, I have another pair of socks. This is another one that you have seen before and one that I've talked about pretty extensively, so I'm gonna go over them quite quickly. These are the bearberry socks by Saskie Co. They are a really beautiful all-over colorwork pair of socks. I knit these in DROPS Fabel in the colours, I think, rust and off-white, but I cannot remember the colorway numbers, so everything will be kind of written out in detail in the description below if I forget to mention anything, but also just for easier referencing. These were a bit of a struggle to figure out because they're all over colorwork, and so they're knit in a fabric that really isn't very stretchy. And so the issue I had with that was I have quite a big difference in the circumference between my foot and my ankle/calf. I have like pretty small feet, but I have pretty chunky calves. And so if I were to just knit the recommended size for my foot circumference, which is how you normally go kind of choose a size for your hand knit socks, that was just gonna be way too small for the calf, I guess for the calf or for the leg portion of the foot. So it took a bit of trial and error, but what I ended up settling on was I knit size 8 for the leg, and then I knit a different type of heel. So the pattern calls for an afterthought heel, but I did a shadow wrap heel, which is a type of short row heel, because I wanted to be able to try it on to make sure that I was actually knitting it to the correct size for me. And then after knitting the heel around this part here, I decreased, I think, 16 stitches potentially, but don't quote me on that. I decreased quite a lot of stitches to knit size 6 for the foot. That was a bit fiddly, and my colorwork is definitely not perfect for these. However, they do fit really, really well, and so I'm very, very happy with that. I'm happy I took the time to try different things out and frog and restart, and that I didn't give up, because they are a really beautiful pair of socks, and I think it's helped me kind of find a recipe for colorwork socks, and at this point I can apply that to other patterns without having to do all of the trial and error. So I'm really, really happy with the way that these turned out. I did finish them at a point kind of in the season where colorwork socks are not really the most appropriate, or like at least all over colorwork socks are not really the most appropriate to wear because it is quite warm, but these are going to be so lovely to wear once the weather turns cold again, kind of in the autumn. So I think that's it about the pattern. I love kind of the pagination of the patterns by Saskie Co. She includes quite a lot of pictures, and I love her color palette choices as well. I think everything is just very cohesive, very beautiful, just very aesthetically pleasing, and I think it very much deserves a mention. And also these socks come in 10 different sizes. They go all the way from like kid sizes to like big adult sizes, so definitely kind of needs a shout out for that. And I think pretty much all of her sock patterns do that, as far as I've been able to tell, so that's really nice. Also, I think these were meant to also have a contrast heel, but I didn't do that because I just kind of like the continuity of it from kind of from the leg to the foot, but I did do a contrast cuff and toe. So that's it for my finished objects. And we can now get into my works in progress pieces. I have 5, as I said, which is quite a lot. I have 2 pairs of socks on the go, both of which I already have a fully finished sock to show for. And then I have a cardigan, a vest, and a t-shirt. So I'm gonna start with my most recent cast on, actually, because it's a continuation from what I was talking about earlier with the skirt. So I really love the way that turned out, and I really loved working with, I just threw this on the floor. I really loved working with this yarn, and I thought it would be so nice to make a matching cardigan to go with the skirt. I do not own any cardigans at all, but I think they'd be something really practical to have, especially for this more like transitional season when, again, we get really cold. Well, not really cold, but we get quite a big difference in temperature between the mornings and the afternoons. And so I decided to cast on the Solene cardigan by Moreca knit. I cast it on Friday, and it's currently Wednesday, and I'm quite a bit of the way through it. I've joined underneath the arms, and I've knit kind of like, I think, 8 centimeters underneath that. So I'm really happy with the progress that I made so far. This is knit on 4.5mm needles. I'm getting a little bit of a looser fabric, I think, than what the pattern intended, but I didn't want to go down a needle size because I wouldn't get gauge at all. The recommended gauge for this is 19 stitches per 10 centimeters in stockinette, and I did a little swatch for it on 4.5mm needles, and I got 20 stitches. I decided to also not go up a needle size to try to get 19 because this is already, it's not like a particularly see-through fabric, but it's already like quite drapey, and I think I just felt like that this was a fabric that I really liked, and I didn't want to make it any more sparse. Also, this has quite a lot of positive ease, and I'm knitting the smaller size, but even with the difference in gauge, I'm still gonna get like a way oversized cardigan, and I don't like particularly oversized things, so I think this is gonna work out really well for me. So again, same yarn as before, I'm using the Sesia Origin in the colour 154 dark grey. I think it's such a beautiful colour. I was gonna knit this cardigan in black, and then I knit the skirt, and I thought I just have to make that to match the skirt. And I also wasn't sure how I was gonna like this colour with like all of my black t-shirts that I have, but I really like the way that the skirt looks with those, so hopefully the cardigan is gonna look similarly, I suppose. So this is a top-down cardigan. You start with 2 separate back pieces that you then join by casting on stitches for the neck. And both of the back pieces are shaped with short rows, and then you just keep knitting stockinette for the back while working increases to shape the armholes, and then you pick up stitches at the front at either halves of the front, shape those with short rows as well, and then work increases for the v-neck front, and then now I've joined everything. Well, not in the round, it's a cardigan, it's still knit flat, but I've joined everything together underneath the arms, and I've been working on that. I am thinking I'm probably going to crop this a little bit because I want it to be like a very specific length with the skirt, but also just with all of my high-waisted trousers. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try it on and like determine how long I want that to be, and then maybe take away like 1.5 centimeters because it's got a bit of ribbing at the bottom, but it doesn't tell you to knit it to length. It gives like a number of rows that you meant to knit. So I'm not quite sure how tall that's gonna be. I could probably calculate it with my row gauge, but I haven't done that yet. So I'm gonna think about that, and then take that away from the length that I want, and then just knit it to that point. I'm also really curious because I've never done a double knitted button band before. So this doesn't actually have buttons, but it does have a double knitted band all the way around the front, and then you close it with I-cord ties. So I'm excited to do that double knit band, even though I know from hearing other people talk about it, it's probably gonna take ages. But the rest of it so far has been flying by. It's been really, really lovely to work on. It's going to be my project for knitting night tomorrow, because at this point it's just stockinette. And also I have a 4-hour train ride on Saturday, so that's going to be nice to work on then. I have a bit of a crazy thought that maybe I can finish the body this week, but we'll see how that goes. But what I was saying before about potentially being able to use my leftover yarn as well from the skirt, I think I could probably use this to knit the I-cord ties. I don't think these are the same dye lot, I have to check, but I don't think you're really going to be able to notice the difference if it's just the ties. So I'm probably going to use it for those, at least that way I don't end up having like multiple bits of yarn left over from different projects. And I think that's all I wanted to say about that. It's been a really enjoyable knit so far, and I'm very curious to see how that's going to turn out in the end. Next up, let's talk about socks again. I have two. So this first pair I cast on pretty much immediately after finishing my poet socks. I love this colour so much, and I wanted to incorporate it in a pair of socks as a contrast colour. And recently, well, it was recently when I cast these on, but it's been maybe a month or like at least like 3 weeks from then. Anyways, I went to the yarn store and I picked up some more sock yarn. This is again DROPS Fabel, and this is the colour Wheat. I think it's probably just gonna show up as white on camera, but it's a really beautiful, like very muted white tone, like very muted, very light beige still. It doesn't pull too cream, it doesn't pull too grey. I think it's a really nice in-between, and I love the way that that looks, and I thought it paired really well with the maroon colour. So my original plan for this was I was gonna knit the Ovis socks. I can't remember the name of the designer off the top of my head, so I'll put that on the screen. But I was gonna knit the Ovis socks, and I was just gonna do a bit of a contrast cuff in half twisted rib. And then I started knitting the half twisted rib, and I thought it looked really beautiful, and then I just kept going. So this is like a self-drafted, it's just like a vanilla pair of socks, so there's nothing to draft about it. But I cast on 66 stitches with the Ovis sock base in the maroon colorway, and then I knit 2 rows in half twisted rib, and then I switched to the wheat colorway, and I've just knit half twisted rib all the way down. I did also do half twisted rib for the toe, at least like for the top of the toe, and then I did stockinette for the bottom of the foot. The heel is a classic heel flap and gusset, and I lined it up so that I would have the knit stitches in the heel flap where the purl stitches are in the leg, and then the slip stitches where the twisted rib stitches are, or like the twisted knit stitches are in the leg, if that makes sense. Because that gave like a very continuous look to the sock, and I'm very proud of how that looked. I think it's a very clean finish, and I'm very happy with that. These look ridiculously skinny, and I have blocked them, but I don't have sock blockers, so blocking didn't do much to these, but they do fit really well. So I'm happy with that. The only thing is, I think I did the Kitchener stitch very loosely at the toe, and so it stretches out a bit, but also I got very evident like pointy ears at the sides of it, which I don't normally get, but it's okay. Also, I was kind of debating how to do the Kitchener stitch for the toe, because I did have the half twisted rib pattern at the top of the toe still, because I just kept doing that, but there wasn't really any way to like make it line up in a way that made sense, and so I just did like a normal kind of Kitchener stitch as if it were all stockinette, and I don't think it looks weird, really. It looks okay, and you can't really tell anything's wrong while you have it on. So that's it for that. I don't know if I said I cast on 66 stitches for the cuff, and then I think I did a 30 row heel flap, which is pretty standard for me. So yeah, that's sock number 1 finished. I've not cast on the second one yet. I ended up actually putting that on pause to start a different pair of socks for a knit along. The knit along was organised by Marlene, Julia, Liz and Paige. I will leave all of their Instagram handles and like YouTube links below. And we're doing a very informal, very relaxed mini knit along for the Quilty Cabin Socks by Horsefeatherfiberarts. This is a pair of socks that was on my make 9 for the year anyways, and so when I saw that they were making a knit along for this specific pattern, I had to draw it, and so I put the other pair of socks on pause and I cast this on. So I have my first sock finished. Again, this is knit in DROPS Fabel. I will eventually place an order for some different sock yarn online. I had an online mutual recommend some really durable sock yarn to me that I want to try out, but DROPS Fabel is the only thing that I really have access to in person, and so it's what I get for now. And for this I use the colour black as my main colour, which I think is colour 400, and then I use that same wheat colourway for my contrast colour. I think this looks so beautiful. I already have other patterns in mind for like a pairs of kind of socks that are mostly plain and then have like a colorwork cuff that I really want to make in a similar or probably the same colorway. Again, because this has the colorwork section, I had to do a little bit of tweaking of the pattern to make it work for my foot and ankle shape, I guess. So I cast on 64 stitches for the cuff, and then I just knit the cuff. I think I knit it a little bit shorter than it was recommended. I normally just do 12 rows of ribbing for the cuff. And I thought that would look better because I only wanted to do one repeat of the colorwork motif. I want to be able to wear these with like low-rise Doc Martens shoes, and I think these are going to look so lovely with that, which is why I need to kind of get on with it and finish them this week or the next. But after the cuff, I increased to 80 stitches for the colorwork section, and I also went up a needle size for the colorwork section. So the entirety of the sock is knit on 2.25mm needles, but I went up to 2.5 for the colorwork section. That gave me a really good fit. These fit really well. The colorwork doesn't stretch at all once it's on my ankle. It's not loose, but it doesn't look like sparse because it's being stretched too much. I don't really have trouble getting these over my heel, but also the foot fits really nicely because after the colorwork I decreased back down to 64 stitches and to 2.25mm needles. And then I just did a regular heel flop and gusset. Again, I think I did 30 stitches, and the rest of the foot is just stockinette. So this was a really fun knit. The colorwork was lovely. I knit that all in a session and it was really nice. And then the foot was just stockinette, so it's very mindless to get on with. I would really like to make another pair, maybe this autumn, with the 2 colorwork repeats, so I can make a bit of a taller pair of socks to wear with boots. But I don't really have any ideas about the colorway for that yet. Maybe something like burgundy and, I don't know, something like either burgundy or like a dark olive green. Autumny colours I think would look really good for this. But it's been so nice. I've never been part of a knit along before. It's been so nice to see everyone's projects, and you know, I joined it from the very start, so it was nice to see everyone sharing their yarn choices, and then now to see all of the progress, and it's really exciting. So that's been really lovely to see. And then I did cast on the second sock. My needles have gotten stuck. I did cast on the second sock, but at the moment it's just like 5 rows of ribbing, so it doesn't really look like much. So that's it for the socks, and then I have 2 more projects to share. This one is one that I did decide to cast on, and it's one that I've been wanting to make for quite a while, that I've had the yarn for quite a while. I think I shared it probably in the first podcast episode I made, but I knew that it was going to be like a long-standing whip. So my idea for this was I was going to cast it on in March, but I'm probably, or like, yeah, just pretty sure I'm not going to have it ready before May or June. And that is the Campanula tee by Cupid knits. So this is an all over irregular rib kind of tight fitting tee that is knit on 2.5mm needles. So it's a labor of love, to say the least. I have done kind of, obviously I've cast on, I've done the short shaping, and then I haven't worked on this for a couple of weeks, but I've done the first set of increases to shape, to like increase for the front, and then now I'm doing the increases for the shoulders. I think the way that the shoulders are shaped is really, really beautiful. It looks so good already. It's got a bit of a saddle shoulder feel, but you actually just cast on and knit everything in the round. And the irregular rib takes a while to establish and to get used to, especially while you're doing the increases, but it's been really lovely to knit on. The only thing I will say was the cast on was so fiddly. You start with a provisional cast on because then you need to be able to pick the stitches back up to knit ruffles. The pattern has ruffles along all of the edges, I think. So the collar, the sleeves, and then the bottom hem, which I think looks beautiful. And those are knit on 2mm needles, which I'm gonna have to go out and buy at some point. But because of that, you need to do a provisional cast on, and doing the provisional cast on and then you do the short rows straight away, I found that beginning bit, everything was very unstable, and I just felt like everything was falling apart. So it took a while to get something that I felt like was easy to work on, if that makes sense. And I actually made a mistake at some point where, I can't find it, here, I have like a couple of pearls that were meant to be knits at the very beginning that I then corrected after the first couple of rows, and I haven't gone back to fix those because I'm just going to fix it once I pick up on the other side. I'm just going to drop the stitches a couple of rows back and fix it then. But other than that, it's been really nice to work on. I am using the recommended yarn for the pattern. I have a full one here, which is a Summer in Kashmir by BC Garn, and I'm using the color 30, which I believe is called Anthrazit. It's like a medium toned warm grey, and this is 90% organic cotton and 10% cashmere. I think you can really feel the cashmere in this. This is really, really soft. You can feel it in the yarn already, but you can very much feel it once you like touch the fabric that it's making already, and I think this is going to be such a nice garment to wear. I'm curious to see how it's going to be like kind of warmth wise, like how warm it's actually going to be once the weather gets hot and I end up wearing these as a t-shirt, but I will report back on that, I suppose. But I didn't want to cast it on quite quickly, even though I knew it was going to take a long time, just because, again, I knew it was going to take a long time, but I want to be able to wear it straight away, kind of once I finish it, and hopefully once I do, it's going to be like June, or well, about June, hopefully. Hopefully not later than that, and it's just going to be nice warm weather for me to wear it in. So that's my current progress on that. And then last but not least, I have a gift knit. So I wanted to make a little something for one of my grandmas, the one that specifically taught me how to knit. I'm probably going to make something for my other grandma at some point as well, but I wanted to make something for this one in particular. And she requested so she had a very specific request. She wanted like an open front v-neck vest without buttons, in a light grey colour. She had a jumper in the exact same grey once she was explaining this to me, so I had a very good colour reference. So that she could be able to kind of wear those over t-shirts in the summer, and ideally she'd want pockets. So we had a bit of a look around for patterns, and in the end she picked the vest number 7 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I did also want to shout out another pattern by Moreca Knit, because I was looking at other patterns for vests while kind of we were choosing it, and Moreca Knit recently came out with a pull vest, which I think is a bit more of a modern type of vest, something that I would probably wear. I don't know if I would wear a vest, but if I had to choose a vest that I would wear, that would be it. And I just wanted to shout out that pattern because I think it looks so like just so neat, so polished. I think it would be so beautiful on top of a shirt. In any case, the vest number 7 is also a really lovely pattern, and it was very much what she wanted. The only main modification I'm doing is I'm not going to be doing buttonholes for the button band, and I'm probably going to add on pockets. So I was debating whether I wanted to kind of put stitches on hold, cast on new stitches, and just kind of leave a hole for the pocket and then knit it on the inside, but I think I'm probably just gonna knit squares and sew them on, just because that would be easier to figure out placement wise, so I can kind of do it and then get her to try on the vest and then place the pockets on it like while she's wearing it, if that makes sense, so they end up being in a place where it's most comfortable for her. Okay, so this is a drop shoulder construction, so you cast on the back of the neck and then I've worked increases to shape the shoulders. I did actually read the pattern wrong and then I went back and I checked and the pattern is clear about it, I just got it wrong, but I ended up working twice as many increases as I needed to, and then I had to frog back. But I've done the increases and then I've just been working straight stockinette for the back, and then at some point I'm gonna have to start increases for the armholes. The reason why I haven't made more progress on it, because I cast it on early last week, is because I had a bit of an incident with the yarn. So I'm using a yarn that my local yarn store stocks, which is another yarn by Sesia, and it's the Sesia 5. I don't know how to, I would say that in Italian, but I feel like I have to pronounce it in English, and I don't know. In any case, it's a 100% cotton yarn, and I found like the perfect grey colour that she wanted. Also for reference, this is 180 meters for 50 grams. And I normally like to center pull yarn, especially with this kind of ball where you can center pull. That was a bad idea. It fell apart. I'm gonna have to untangle this. I do still have like, some of it is intact, but also, yeah. So I'm probably just gonna cut it and start a new ball of yarn, and then once I have an afternoon where I don't have anything else to do and I'm just feeling very calm and very peaceful, I can unravel all of this. But despite that, I am actually really enjoying the yarn. It's fairly soft, it's been knitting up quite nice. I'm not finding it too hard on my hands. I know some people find cotton really hard to knit with. It's maybe not as enjoyable as wool, but I'm not finding it unpleasant, if that makes sense. I did, however, have to go up a needle size compared to what's recommended in the pattern, so I'm knitting it on 4mm needles. I think the pattern calls for 3.5, just because I wasn't really getting gauge. Somewhere I have my original gauge swatch. It's a tiny gauge swatch, ignore that, but I did a gauge swatch on 3.5mm needles and I quite liked the fabric, but then I blocked it and the stitches really bloomed and kind of filled it in, and so I felt that I could go up to 4mm quite comfortably and I wouldn't get to like see-through of a fabric, but I was gonna get closer to matching gauge, and so that's what I ended up doing. But I think it's been working quite well. I'm gonna get her to try it on as soon as I've joined underneath the arms, probably, just to make sure. But so far that's just the progress I have. So I think that's pretty much it. That was quite a lot, but I think March was a pretty good knitting month. I'm very excited going forward to start working on some more camisoles, especially. I have a long list of camisoles that I would like to make this summer that I'm definitely not gonna get to, but I'll do my best to get through it all. If you have recommendations for summer yarns that you like to work with, I'd love to hear about them, especially if you live in Italy or in generally just like more European yarns. That would be easier for me to get, but I'd love to hear about that. With that, thank you so much for watching and I will see you soon. Bye!